I'd better switch the microphone on. Good evening and thanks for attending the meeting for planning on Tuesday the 8th of July 2025. Excuse me, I'm Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the Committee. Councillor Whittam is the Vice Chair. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. If you're in attendance as a member of the public who is registered to speak, please note that you have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish speaking, or if in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish. Otherwise, your microphone will be muted. To assist in following the evening's proceedings, a pack has been prepared and is available online containing each item's report, plans, presentation slides and addendum. After officers have presented the report and any speakers have made their representations, I'll invite members to make any comments. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand, and when invited to speak, please remember to use your microphone and reference the paragraph number, which will allow everyone to follow. Please keep in mind that some people require closed captions and/or lip reading to follow the proceedings, so please speak slowly, clearly, and try to keep your hands away from your mouth. Please, can everyone ensure the phones are turned to silent? We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms sound, please exit the way you came in. I've got apologies, please, Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. I've had apologies from Councillor Russ Green and Councillor Wilkie. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to any declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. If you have such an interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before business starts to be discussed, but you do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Moving on to item 2. Minutes of the meeting Tuesday the 10th of June 25 of the Planning Committee, pages 3 to 4. Can somebody move those, please? Thank you. Stand that seconded. All those in favour? Please show. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3, planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for planning applications are as follows. The officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or their agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against the application, as chair, I may grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. And what I'm going to do item 3A, and then I'm going to move up item 3D as the second item on the agenda. That's the Eves Lane application. So, item 3A. Douglas Bank Farm, Bolton Road, Anderton, pages 5 to 22, with an update on your addendum, including an additional condition. Chris is going to present this item. The officer recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and authority to be delegated to the head of planning and enforcement to agree the final wording of planning and to the chair and the vice chair. I've got a number of registered speakers. I've got the objector, Phil Holt, Parish Councillor Ian Horsfield, Ward County Councillor Kim Snape, and the agent, Robert Harrison. Over to you, Chris.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So the application site is located in the Greenbelt within the rural locality of Anderton. So the site consists of an agricultural building on the northern edge of a group of buildings which make up Douglas Bank Farm. The farm is located towards the end of an unadopted track which can be accessed from the A673 Bolton Road, which is around 320 metres to the north of the site. The application seeks full planning permission to use the building for the storage of 2 commercial vehicles. No external alterations to the building are proposed, nor are any required in order to facilitate the development. The statement submitted with the application states that the development would result in 4 vehicle movements per day. That will be 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening when the vehicles leave and return to the site. A condition can be attached to any grant of planning permission in order to control and restrict the vehicle movement times. So we've had 8 representations of objection, raising various issues, including noise from vehicles travelling to and from the site, highway safety, the location of the site in the greenbelt, flooding, and a number of the representations object to the development on the basis that other activities and uses have been taking place on other parts of the wider site at Douglas Bank Farm. The planning application, however, can only consider and assess the merits of the development that is now proposed, and it can't consider the acceptability of any of the other activities beyond the extent of the red edge on the location plan. We've also picked up an objection from Anderton Parish Council, objecting on the same grounds as those expressed by neighbouring residents. We have no outstanding objections from technical consultees. In particular, LCC Highways have not raised any objections to the development, and they've stated that they had no objections to the application submitted in 2024, which was for the storage of up to 5 commercial vehicles across the wider part of the site. So a full assessment of the scheme against Greenbelt policy is provided in the committee report, and members will note that officers consider the proposal is not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt due to meeting exceptions within the National Planning Policy Framework at paragraph 154H, which relates to the reuse of buildings within the Greenbelt. The proposed development is therefore considered to be acceptable in principle. And the scheme is also considered to be acceptable in terms of potential impacts relating to highway safety and amenity, as the site is more than 100 metres away from the nearest neighbouring residential property, so there will be limited impacts on amenity as a result of noise and light pollution. So the officer recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions as outlined in the main report.
Thank you. Have I got Phil?
Can you hear that? Oh, lovely. Okay, thank you. I'll put my timer on. So, good evening. I'm here tonight as a representative of my immediate neighbours, some of which are here and some are not. They are unable to attend. Throssell's Nest on Bolton Road was a lovely place to live. Over time, due to Douglas Bank Farm, that has changed. The farm has existed for a number of years. What has changed is the development and expansion of the farm and the inclusion of commercial vehicles in road traffic. Commercial movement can start any time from 5 a.m. It produces pollution, be it noise, dust, light, that impacts on our daily lives, affecting our physical and mental well-being. The track is not suitable for the vehicles that use it. It is damaged with large potholes. Gate posts have been snapped and boundary posts run over by the commercial traffic. We're unable to use the track safely due to underside damage of residents' vehicles. We've asked the farm to contribute to the maintenance of the lane, and they've refused. As residents, we fill in the holes in the road, but very quickly the stone is dispersed due to the commercial traffic. The land was sold with a condition attached that it was to be used for agricultural use only. This is clearly not the case. Also attached was a condition that the land could not be used for anything that would cause a nuisance or disturbance to the neighbours. This is absolutely not the case. I personally witnessed the ground move around service entrances when the large commercial traffic pulls off the main road onto the track. We have concerns for how services, should the excess weight from the traffic cause the facilities to collapse. The planning report indicated that the nearest property, the stables, is more than 100 metres from the farm, and the degree of separation is adequate to ensure the development would not have any unacceptable adverse impacts on the amenity of the occupiers of this property or any others. Where in the report does it mention that the commercial traffic passes right past the property and in some instances within feet of it? Where the normal people We are normal people who have invested in the community in order to cherish it. The actions of Douglas Bank Farm have resulted in an oppressed place to live. The request for storage of commercial vehicles will increase commercial traffic up and down the track. We have children and elderly people with a respiratory illness living in our community. Please don't open the way to further damage our living environment. And finally, living around Douglas Bank Farm is far from a pleasure. Let's not forget, Anderton is a parish, a neighbourhood, and above all, where people live. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian?
Right, thank you, Chair. I want to make representation on behalf of the Parish Council and also as a local resident in objecting to this planning application. Planning application relates to a building in some 5 acres of tenanted farmland to the rear of Throstlenest Farm, which we understood to be tenanted for agricultural use as pasture for grazing and possible arable use. Over time, we've seen this systematically developed into an agricultural contractor's operating base and bale storage area serving a much wider agricultural enterprise than that contained on the site. This has been achieved mainly by an erection of a number of large buildings and incorporation of large amounts of rubble to form a hard surface over a large proportion of what was previously green field. This has resulted in much greater levels of vehicle activity than were ever envisaged, as a consequence has generated much nuisance to surrounding residents. We therefore cannot agree with the conclusions reached in the planning officer's report regarding this application, particularly that this change of use would have no adverse effect on the surrounding area, the neighbourhood amenity, local residents or potentially public safety. And we would like the committee to take into account the following points. Quantity, type and times of vehicles already using the access route through Throstlenest creates noise disturbance and vibration problems for those residents living near the access. We consider this to be an unsuitable access route. The noise nuisance from vehicle operations on site, particularly high-pitched vehicle reversing horns, can be heard over a wider residential area much further out than the 100 metres claimed in the report. The applicant has already had a previous application to use this site as an HGV operating base turned down on appeal as being inappropriate development in Greenbelt, and we think this is indicative of where this planning would go. Requests to both the landowner and tenant to put in place mitigation measures to try to resolve the nuisance issues have been ignored, and we believe this planning application would add to the problems. Lancashire County have expressed the view that any development permitted under agricultural development rights should be restricted to that which is reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture within the farm unit, which we think has already been grossly exceeded. And the tenant has declared himself that a desire to erect further buildings to house livestock and store equipment, which poses the question, why convert an existing building? We consider that the past evidence has shown intent to exploit and develop this site irrespective of the detrimental effects on the local area. We believe that granting this planning application would give further licence for exploitation and would constitute inappropriate development in Greenbelt. It would do nothing to alleviate the current levels of nuisance and indeed may well exacerbate them. We therefore request that this application is refused.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to formally object to the planning application representing our residents of the area on the following grounds. The proposal is inappropriate and contrary to several policies within the local plan and the Central Lancashire Core Strategy, as well as the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF. And my concerns are detailed below and are grounded in planning policy. Number one, inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. The proposed development is situated within the Greenbelt, as has been mentioned, under the Local Plan Policy BNE 5 and the NPPF paragraphs 147 to 151. Development in the Greenbelt is deemed inappropriate unless it meets specific exceptions. Commercial vehicle storage does not fall within these exceptions, and no very special circumstances have been demonstrated to justify this harmful change of use. The proposal conflicts with the fundamental aim of the Greenbelt to preserve openness and prevent urban sprawl. Number two, the highway safety and the inadequate access policy ST1. The access to the site is via a 320-metre unadopted track from Bolton Road, which is unsuitable for regular HGV use. Local reports indicate that HGVs have already damaged the track, as you've been told. Increased commercial traffic will pose significant risk to road users and pedestrians in direct conflict with policy ST1, which requires safe and secure access without severe impact on the highway network. Number 3, the adverse impact on amenity, policy BNE1. The introduction of commercial vehicle activity will generate excessive noise and disturbance, particularly for neighbouring rural properties. This is contrary to policy BNE1, which requires that proposals must not adversely affect the amenity of surrounding uses. The proposal will have a negative effect on the quiet rural character of the area. The council is already aware of this, I understand, as a result of years of complaints from residents regarding noise and disturbance from this increased commercial activity and from vehicle movements in the area. And the public protection team and the environmental health team and the planning enforcement team at Chorley Council and Lancashire County Council have been involved. There's been issues with regard to tipping on the site, Environment Agency involved. I know some of that's irrelevant to the considerations this evening, but understandably people take that into account when you live there. The beeping of horns on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, I've had complaints about that over the last couple of years. And I want to remind members that this is not a storage unit for 2 vehicles to be locked up for years on end. I'm informed that each vehicle has a named driver associated with it and they're used daily as part of a 40-hour-a-week operation. These vehicles are part of a major business operation, and for potentially up to two 32-ton vehicles to be coming up and down a narrow track to a green belt field repeatedly, although you've recommended a planning condition on timings, is not appropriate in this location and is already having an adverse impact on the amenity. Number 4, the unsuitable location for industrial type use, policy LOC 1. The area around Douglas Bank Farm is rural and not allocated for employment or industrial use, I understand. Core strategy policy 1, LOC 1, development should be directed to appropriate and sustainable locations. Douglas Bank and the wider Throstle Nest area is clearly not an industrial estate, and the proposed use is out of character with the surrounding environment. Number 5, the concerns over compliance and the site history, as has been mentioned. I appreciate this isn't material to considerations, however, it's important to note there's been various different actions undertaken on the site, unlawful tipping that's taken place, and those discussions are still ongoing with the County Council, and I believe there's been various different enforcement notices issued. The initial application for this site was submitted, I believe, as a result of Chorley Council enforcement visits on the back of residents' concerns, and I understand the Environment Agency are looking at various activities here as well. I have significant concerns about the applicant's future compliance with planning controls and the environmental suitability of the site for future commercial intensification. And for the reasons outlined above, I would urge the Planning Committee to refuse this application. The proposal is clearly contrary to a number of policies that I've quoted, and I thank you for considering our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I got Robert, please?
Am I all right to speak now? Is that better? Yes. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Robert Harrison of P. Wilson and Company, the planning agent on behalf of the applicant. We've heard this planning application is for the change of use of a small existing agricultural building situated in the farmyard at Douglas Bank Farm to a mixed-use building of agriculture and undercover parking for 2 commercial vehicles, wagons. No alteration to the building is needed. The application site is situated in the Greenbelt. Therefore, paragraph 154 of the National planning policy framework and local plan policy HS9 are relevant and must be applied when determining this planning application. This is what the planning officer has done in reaching his recommendation to you. A comprehensive planning assessment performed by the planning officer and set out within your application report pack details the relevant planning policies which your planning officer has taken into full consideration when reaching his recommendation to you. Resulting from this comprehensive planning assessment, the planning officer has determined that the planning application meets the policy criteria set out under paragraph 154H5 of the MPPF, which allows a conversion of existing buildings in the green belt, and policy HS9 criteria A through to H of the Chorley local plan, and no planning reasons exist to refuse this planning application. The planning office has also assessed the impact on neighbourhood amenity, highways and other matters such as safety buffer zones for gas pipes, etc. The planning officer is satisfied that enough separation from neighbouring properties exists so no adverse impacts are created, and Lancashire County Council Highway Department have no highway concerns. There have been a number of representations submitted to the Council which are set out in sections 5 to 6 of the application report pack. Many of the points made by the public objectors and the Parish Council are irrelevant to this planning application. For example, it has been alleged that the farm is an illegal landfill site and that ASGVs have damaged the access track leading to the site. These allegations are not relevant to this planning application. They are matters being dealt with under a separate planning application yet to be determined, factually incorrect or a non-planning related matters, such as damage and repair to the existing tract, and the fact this could be actually caused by agricultural traffic, not commercial traffic or HGVs, as alleged. As determined by your planning officers through a thorough planning assessment, the planning application satisfies local and national planning policy. I would ask that you accept this recommendation made by your planning officer based on relevant planning matters and vote to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on anything?
Thanks, Chair. Just want to clarify a few points for members. So some of the comments that we did hear from speakers aren't relevant to the consideration of this particular application. So comments relating to covenants, restricting the uses of the site, the issues with the access track not being maintained, the land being tenanted for agricultural use, and other enforcement issues that may have happened in the past or be ongoing, they are not relevant material considerations in determining this application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. It's over to you, members.
Sorry, Chair. When the report was going through, it showed several pictures of the development. Could somebody point out which particular building we're talking about? There's one that's an open-sided building that I just wanted to make sure I got the right building, because it talks about one building on the side. That one there. Is that the build? That open-sided building, is that the building we're talking about? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Chair. Feedback from Councillor Southern there. I get both sides of the argument here. I can get it from the residents' point of view, but I also get it from the application's point of view as much as how it's being laid out. Presuming the track isn't adopted, yeah. Do we know who owns that, or is it joint in several? I.e., does the track belong to the farm, or is it an access track that's been put through that other road users can use? I couldn't quite decipher.
Thanks, Councillor Southern. So looking at the site location plan, most of the access track falls outside of the ownership of the applicant. So I'm not sure who owns it. To be quite
Fine. The point being that obviously you mentioned maintenance of the track, and I also get if you've got even a couple of trucks twice a day, 2 trucks running past your house, there is going to have a material effect on the road surface there. Is there any condition we can apply there in terms of maintenance, agreed maintenance? Not really, is there?
Unfortunately not, because with it being outside of the control
Outside
of the
the controlled
applicant,
area. I
any
did think.
condition won't be enforceable, I'm afraid.
I did think, yeah. Yeah, I get it, but the application as laid out and the way we put it forward, it does come within the remit. So, kind of reluctantly, I'd like to propose that we accept officer's recommendation.
Chair, it's very difficult without knowing the site, listening to representations that have been made by residents, by the developer and so on, and the county councillor for the area as well. I wonder if it would assist when we're making this decision, it's obviously quite an important decision locally, whether I could propose that we have a site visit, Chair.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Southern here. I feel sympathy for the local residents, but there are no valid planning reasons to refuse this application. So I'll second his proposal for officer recommendations. Thank you.
Just with this one, so we know it's in the green belt. So does it not contra then, like, as it's been mentioned by people talking, does it not contra then the Chorley local plan BNE5?
Thanks, Chair. No, as the proposals are for the reuse of an existing building, it meets the exceptions test in MPPF for what is appropriate development in the green belt.
Okay. Southern.
Just to come back on that, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the hours of use on this are between 7 AM and 18 PM, is that correct? And we can enforce that? Thank you.
Okay. Nobody else wish to comment? I've got a proposer for a site visit, but that has not been seconded. And I've got a proposer and a seconder that we accept the officer recommendation. So can we vote on that, please? I'm going to abstain. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve planning permission subject to conditions. The wording of the condition is to be delegated to the Head of Planning and Enforcement, Chair and Vice Chair.
Thank you. If anybody's just come for that item, please feel free to go now. We don't want not subject you to the whole meeting. I'll look to that. No worries, thanks. too many bits of paper. Ah, there it is. Too many bits of paper. Keep losing things. Item 3D is 301, 305 Eves Lane, Chorley, pages 73 to 96. Chris is going to present this item. Recommendation is prior approval is required and recommended that it should be granted subject to conditions. I have one registered speaker, the agent, Sam Golding. Okay, Chris?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So the site is in Chorley on the west side of Eves Lane within the Eves Lane local centre. The site is a two-storey end terrace building which contains a pair of retail units at ground level. This is a Morrison's daily convenience store and a Hall's bakery with storage space at first floor level. The surrounding area is densely built up and it contains a range of uses, including a variety of commercial and retail uses, as well as residential properties. The application is a prior approval application which has been submitted under the provisions of Part 3, Class MA of the General Permitted Development Order, which sets out various permitted development rights which allow the change of use of buildings which fall within Use Class E to residential uses. The proposed development would involve the change of use of the building to 11 residential apartments, with the ground floor retail units to be retained. No representations have been received and there are no outstanding objections from technical consultees. A full assessment of the scheme is contained within the committee report, which sets out how the proposed development complies with the criteria of Class MA of Part 3 of the GPDO, and the development is therefore permitted development. However, a condition of Class MA requires the developer to apply to the local planning authority for a determination as to whether prior approval is required for various matters, all of which are set out and assessed in the committee report. It's considered that the development complies with each of the matters, although this is subject to the provision of further information relating to how the noise impacts of the ground floor retail units will be mitigated. It should, however, be noted that a separate planning application has now been submitted for the conversion of the retail units at ground level, and this is currently being assessed. However, a noise assessment is still required in the event that the ground floor units are not converted to a residential use and their lawful use remains in Class E. The officer recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions as outlined in the committee reports.
Thank you. Have I got Sam, please? Okay.
Is it working? Yeah, fine. Good evening all. First of all, thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee, and I would like to thank Mr Smith, the planning officer, for working very closely with us on this application. He is mentioned that the ground floor change of use is being submitted as well. It's not the entire ground floor, it's just the right-hand side retail unit that's been submitted. Multiple tenants have been trying to rent out that unit there, besides the Morrisons and the upstairs units, and nothing has come to avail. They've reduced the price and there's just not been any demand. It's very hard to work out demand for residential units within a setting, but we've managed to find a website called spareroom.com, which focuses on finding, it gives you the number of people that are looking for residential units, mixture of small apartments and HMOs. And right now there's only 17 accommodations available, not with 32 people looking. That was the end of last week. So there's a high demand for residential. Spaces within the area. As the officer has stated, there has been zero objections from the public, and there's zero objections from any of the consultees, including environmental health, waste, highways, and any other officers have been consulted. As the officer has clearly said, there's no conflict to any planning policies. It's not a listed building, nor is it any specific national park or World Heritage Site. The planning officer has clearly shown, has stated in his report that the transport and highways, we've addressed that with the bike storage at the rear on the ground floor, and it has also, we've also shown that there's sufficient light to all habitable rooms. It's not within a flood zone, And yes, we did supply a basic level noise assessment and how we mitigate it, but if the officer requires additional further information, we're more than happy to supply that. We'd like to thank again the planning officer for recommending it for approval, and as this is a Class MA, I believe it's only a technicality it's come to the committee, not for any other reasons, just because it's over 10 dwellings being created. Thank you and have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, Roberto? Over to you, members. Councillor Lowe, Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. As one of the ward representatives, a number of comments and observations about this which vary on, to my mind, certain inconsistencies and a level of amusement. If I bring members' attention, first of all, to paragraph 3 of the report. So what is in front of us is the application for the first and second floors amounting to 11 residential apartments, and just the reiteration that it doesn't affect the ground floor of the building, and I take on board the application that's due to be considered at some future stage with regard to part of the ground floor. So we're concerned with the first and second floors of it. Bring members' attention first of all to the consultations from the statutory bodies, and I'm noting particularly as long as the comment from the Environmental Health Officer, first of all, that they have no objection subject to conditions, and hopeful that the relevant noise, etc. conditions will be forthcoming and set out. I find the comment on paragraph 7 from Lancashire County Council Highways as stated they do not have any objections and are of the opinion it would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. Further on in the report, I'll come back to the highways and the impact on the local area as far as highway safety, but I would contend that the current issues around that area and the nearby residential streets are as a result of the Morrison's local business and the former bakery, rather than any proposals that we're going to consider. I find it, if I go on members' attention to paragraph 10 of the report, I noticed the planning history, and there was a previous planning permission for 6 residential flats going back, I think, to 2007, and I think updated in 2016 for 6 dwellings, never been enacted, and I wonder why, if there was such a need in the area, why that wasn't enacted. Going on from the rest of the planning history, I note in terms of there are no car parking spaces associated with this, even though I note there is bike storage. So we're assuming that future tenants of this site won't have a car. No additional cars, they'll just have bikes or use public transport. So I just find that amusing. I take on board the impact on the noise, particularly if we're serious about maintaining standards for future tenants of properties in this borough. Housing standards have got to be appropriate. But just my final comments, Chair, and I can't necessarily find a planning reason to oppose this application, but I'll give notification I'll be voting against this application. But in terms of the map, the proposed map on the first floor, which shows, if I've done my sums right, 9 dwellings, proposed dwellings on the first floor and 2 on the second floor. So the 9 dwellings on the first floor have obviously upped from 6 that have had previous approval. So I appreciate the size of these proposed apartments to get 9 in basically the same kind of floor space is a bit, I could argue it was over intensification. But yeah, say, I'm just concerned whether, despite protestations, there may be an impact on the surrounding areas and the impact on the existing highway safety matters, particularly if members look at the site plan, which means, I think it's the aerial photograph. There is a small car park at the back of the properties, but that isn't for residential usage. It's designed, it's historically been designed to car parking provision for the shops and bakery, as was. So at that point, Chair, I've got reservations, but I can't find any planning reasons to move a refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. It's not often I disagree with Councillor Lowe in Planning Committee, but on this occasion I'm going to do that. We do have a shortage of houses in Chorley at the moment, and we have lots of developers building these lovely 3, 4, 5-bedroomed houses on green fields. Whereas actually, if you look at the need in Chorley, the biggest need is for single accommodation. And with the exception of, I think, one of these flats here, these are all single accommodation, self-contained flats. That is the need that we need to address. It's in a sustainable location. It's close to the town centre. It's within walking distance of lots of the shops, local amenities, the railway station, buses, etc. And this is the sort of place that young people looking to move into their first home would actually be looking at, whether it be rent, whether they actually get a mortgage on it. So it's their first steps to independence. And like I say, this addresses the biggest housing need in Chorley at the moment. So for that reason, I'm very much in favour of the application, and I'd like to propose offer to recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Whittaker, Councillor France, Councillor Southern. Councillor Whittaker.
Last week we had a paper out, I don't know whether it's been approved yet or not, about houses of multiple occupation. Could the officer tell us whether this complies with that?
All the properties within the building are fully self-contained individual units, so it's not a house of multiple occupation, they are all individual units.
Thank you, Chair. I can't see a reason to refuse this application, so I'm quite happy to second Councillor Hilton. The only comment I would make is I don't like so many near the town centre with only a bike shed and no parking at all, assuming that these single professional people that are moving into these apartments would not have a vehicle. I think they might, but yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Hilton.
Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. I would best describe it as compact and bijou. I have no main objection, to be fair, Chair, as has been pointed out by Councillor Hilton. These are self-contained flats as opposed to the HMOs we have looked at. Not particularly happy about a fire escape off one of the bedrooms, but that's a building issue, not a planning issue. So on that basis, I would second basically what Councillor France and Councillor Hilton have said and approve officer's recommendation. Thank you.
I think that thirded it, really, because Councillor France. Any more comments? Councillor Lowe?
No problem, Chair. In terms of, like I said, the remarks, I can't find any planning reasons to turn it down. Just a quick observation in terms of housing need and matching. I wish that if it was, like say, approved, that it's enacted upon rather than the previous application. And I'll just make the observation, not so long ago, we approved an application in another part of my patch which pretended to meet housing need that's never ever been enacted upon, and the particular need was for a particular occupation at the hospital. So I appreciate Councillor Hilton's observation in terms of hopefully this meets a housing need, and I wish it all the success, and I just wish it would, the previous one had been enacted upon.
Okay, thank you. Has everybody spoken? Right, I'll move to the vote, please, Dan. All those in favour? There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to grant prior approval subject to conditions.
Okay, thank you. If anybody's come for that, please feel free to go. Thank you. Going back now to item 3B, Liberata, pages 17 to 23, Gillibrand Street, Chorley, pages 23 to 54, with an update on your addendum. Chris is going to present this item, it's his show tonight. And the office's recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have one registered speaker and objector, Kevin Scanlon. Okay, Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The site is in Chorley Town Centre on the south side of Gillibrand Street, and it contains a two-storey building which in the past contained offices. The area around the site is densely built up and it contains a mix of uses, including residential properties and a variety of commercial uses and services along Gillibrand Street. The application has been submitted by Chorley Council and it seeks full planning permission to change the use of the building to a residential use which would provide temporary living accommodation for vulnerable families who are supported by the council. The resultant building would have 2 3-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom units with a shared dining and kitchen area. Permission is also sought for various external works, including the installation of new windows and new boundary fencing. Planning permission is not, however, being sought to change the use of the building to a secure residential institution falling under use class C2A of the use classes order. In total, 4 representations of objection were received during the assessment of the application, outlining concerns about parking, traffic and highway safety, security concerns and impacts on the local community. However, since the report was published, we've received 15 further objections raising the same issues. There are no outstanding objections from statutory technical consultees, and a letter in support of the proposed development has been submitted by the Council's Housing Options team, who stated that they support the provision of family-only temporary accommodation. A full assessment of the scheme is set out in the committee report, which sets out that the development is acceptable in principle due to the location of the site in the core settlement area of Chorley, and the scheme is in compliance with policy HS10 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy, which seeks to protect employment premises. The scheme is also considered to be acceptable in terms of potential impacts relating to design, amenity and highway safety, and therefore the officer recommendation is to approve subject to conditions as outlined in the main report.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I've got Kevin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I wasn't aware of the change made to this application. So my statement very much links to what was previously suggested in terms of a change of use of the property. If the applicant had properly consulted my community about this plan, we wouldn't be here discussing it. It's a bad plan for this part of Chorley, not least highlighted that it's chipping away at the council's important local plan. I have specific objections, however, I would like to add a voice to the objections already submitted by other residents. This building is clearly an office unsuitable for use as a residential accommodation, essentially for vulnerable individuals. It's a prominent and significant crossroads in this community. Visually, it would never look the same again if the removal of the hedging takes place. In what context would this committee allow residents to install a 1.8 metre fencing in front of their property? Firstly, and this relates to the Class 2A, the change of use Class 2A means that the office site would become used for all kinds of secured accommodation now and in the future, and the council and local community would lose the right to object to this. Secondly, I've worked for 13 years in a secure hospital in safety and security training and operational management. These plans do not indicate modern design security measures. The plan simply opts for an outmoded brutalist style 1.8 metre perimeter fence. This is inadequate and potentially unsafe. This wouldn't support secure and orderly evacuation procedures in an emergency, decanting vulnerable residents into a fenced area. There is also constrained space for emergency vehicles to access. These offices on this small plot of land are not suitable for secure residential use. A purpose-built secure accommodation would have modern safety and security measures built into the design. Finally, the application doesn't refer to but will have significant adverse impact on the local community with an ongoing issue of persistent and antisocial behaviour, especially during evening hours. Groups of teenagers, mainly boys, often dressed in black, some with faces covered, pass through the adjacent roads. It's a cut-through route from Pall Mall to the town centre. Many residents being subjected to incidents of harassment, criminal damage and even arson. These problems in recent years have led to increased use of CCTV and video doorbells by affected households, including mine. The area, and especially the crossroads, are a corridor for unruly behaviour. Online crime statistics verify this.
Could you wind up now, please?
Yes, I will do, yeah. Not all areas in Chorley are affected by this. The secure residence is for vulnerable individuals is right in the path of these frequent disturbances. Therefore, I invite the committee to reject this planning application in full. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. We're actually trying to build accommodation for vulnerable families. This is not a prison that we're building here. I think this is completely appropriate use of this. It's not for vulnerable individuals, it's for vulnerable families with children. I don't understand how this is chipping away at the local plan. That comment doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And actually all areas of Chorley are affected by this because anybody across anywhere in Chorley could fall on hard times and find themselves homeless. And this is a way of providing families with secure, decent accommodation. So I'm very much in favour of the office recommendations and I would like to propose them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. A brief looking over the plan that's certainly more capacious than the previous application. Something more like we're looking at. Concur with Councillor Hilton in terms of what this is being used for. The only caveat here is, can I just ask officers, Chair, have we any sway over this fence that we're talking about putting in? Because I rather like the hedge, to be fair. It adds greenery to the street. I don't particularly like the hedge scenario, the fence scenario at 1.8 metres, but I understand why you would do that. Have we got any sway on condition on that hedge? Can we do anything with it?
Thanks, Councillor Southern. Yeah, there is a condition listed as condition 4 as part of the pack. Yeah, we as officers shared some of the concerns about the boundary treatments, hence why we've included it as a condition so we can agree those points moving forward. It's not a point of principle, so it's suitable to be dealt with by condition.
Fine, if you can condition that and keep the hedge, happy days, and I'm happy to second Councillor Hilton's recommendation for officers' rec approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Thanks, Dan. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve Planning Commission subject to conditions.
Okay, present this item. He's a busy lad tonight. The office recommendation is permission in principle is granted. Okay, and I've no registered speakers. Off you go.
Yep, thank you, Chair. The application site is located in the Greenbelt to the east of Bradderton Road and to the west of Croston. The site is a parcel of flat agricultural land surrounded by hedgerows, with a railway line running along the eastern side of the site. Land immediately to the north of the site is located within flood zones 2 and 3. However, no part of the site itself falls within any part of a flood zone. The application seeks planning permission in principle for the erection of 6 detached dwellings. The application is only concerned with the principle of the development, and material planning considerations such as highway safety and ecological impacts cannot be assessed as part of the application, as such matters would need to be considered as part of any subsequent application for technical details consent. 2 representations have been received from neighbouring residents objecting to the development on various grounds, including the location of the site in the Greenbelt, the lack of any very special circumstances to justify the development, that the site is not grey belt land, and other matters including flood risks, highway safety, and the potential environmental impacts of the development, such as loss of trees and impacts on newts. Croston Parish Council have also stated that they object to the development on the basis that it would result in additional traffic, which will place added pressure on Croston's road infrastructure, which is already heavily used. A full assessment of the scheme against Greenbelt policy is provided in the committee report, and members will note that officers consider the proposal is not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt due to meeting exceptions within the National Planning Policy Framework at paragraph 155A, which relates to the development of Greybelt land. The committee report explains that the site is Greybelt land, that the development would not fundamentally undermine the purposes of the Greenbelt when taken together, and that there is a fundamental unmet need for the type of development that has been proposed, and also that the site is in a sustainable location. Therefore, the development complies with the requirements of paragraph 155 of the framework, and the officer's recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions as outlined in the main report.
Thank you. Basically, it's over to you, members. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. Well, here we go again with planning in principle. 6 months ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This wouldn't have even come to me because it was slam dunk. No, it's Greenbelt. You don't build on it. However, central government, in its infinite wisdom, has decided it wants to boost housing, and alas, this is what we're left with. I've gone through the application, and I've struggled, quite frankly. I did ponder the 155, is it Greybelt, is it Greenbelt? It doesn't need to have weight to it or special circumstances because of where it sits in 155. That's the point I've got. And in terms of spread and sprawl, it backs onto a railway track. If it had been 50 yards down the road in Croston Village, different scenario. So I would argue it is Greenbelt. It's all Greenbelt, but this is what we've got and this is what we've been faced with. These are the challenges we have in the National Planning and Policy Framework. I can't go against officer's recommendation on this because it is what it is. However, I can't support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Whittaker.
I'll be careful what I say, Chair. This is no more grey than I am. It's proposed, the whole purpose of Greenbelt is to stop the spread of residential development. Along this site, you've got a main railway line, right? At the other side of the railway line is Croston. At the other side of this site is the River Douglas. So there's no possibility whatsoever of this preventing spread. It's a crazy application. It's purely speculative, and I'm amazed at the officer's recommendation, given the difficulties of grey. I understand all of that, but that's nonsense. But this is plainly Greenbelt, and that's what you've seen. The local people object to it, the parish council object to it, and I can't vote for it. I'm going to vote against it. And I mean, if anybody doubts the site, let's have a look at the site and see what you think for itself. If this is grey belt, there's nowhere safe in the rural areas of this area.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hilton.
I pretty much agree with everything Councillor Whittaker's just said about urban sprawl, etc. But it is grey belt by definition. The officers have demonstrated that, and I know grey belt is quite grey. I wish it were a little bit more black and white, but it is what it is. I don't particularly like this, but I agree with the officer's report on that this does have to be seen as grey belt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy if Councillor Hilton has moved officer recommendation to grant permission in principle, because we are where we are, as Councillor Southern mentioned. It's a very narrow this permission in principle application mechanism, and so even though, as the planning officer has stated, material considerations will be forthcoming when we consider the wider aspects, on the very narrowness of this application, I can't find any planning reason to turn it down, and so I'll second the officer recommendation.
Sorry, I hadn't actually formally proposed that. I just made a comment.
I'll move it, Chair, then.
Thank you.
Reluctantly, again, yeah, I'm going to have to second it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve permission in principle.
Item 4, Charlie Borough Council Tree Preservation Order. I'm not reading all the numbers. Maudsley. Pages 97 to 110. Kevin's going to present this item. The recommendation is formal confirmation of the order affords permanent as opposed to provisional legal protection to the tree covered by that order. And I have one registered speaker, the supporter, Julie Etherington. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. This report is seeking agreement to confirm the Tree Preservation Order 2025 number 1 at 4A New Street, Maudsley. The order was made to protect this mature oak tree on the 6th of February 2025. Following consultation, 1 objection and 9 representations in support have been received, and a summary of these representations is set out in your agenda. The tree is highly visible from New Street and makes a valuable contribution to the character and amenity of the area. There are a few other mature trees in the immediate area, and the tree has a positive contribution to local ecology. It is noted that some works have taken place to the tree in recent days. However, these are in line with the scope of works that were previously agreed with the Council's tree officers. It is therefore recommended members agree confirmation of the tree preservation order as set out in your agenda reports pack. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Julie.
Bottom button. Okay, thank you. So, hello everybody, and to the Chair, thank you for letting me speak in support of this TPO being made permanent. I'm here to provide a personal perspective and to sit alongside Kevin Foster's comprehensive report and to hopefully help inform your decision. So, I live next door to the tree, and I'm also the person who alerted Chorley Council to the owner's plans to fell the tree back at the end of January. I've lived in Maudsley for 25 years and brought up my family here. I have a good understanding of what is important to the people who live in Maudsley. My family and our neighbours enjoy this tree, living nearby. The changing seasons, the birds that are roosting there, the learning opportunities we've had for our daughter growing up next door to it, such as growing seedlings from the acorns, and it makes the corner where we live, which is known historically as Four Lane Ends, a green and leafy area, and that's one of the reasons why, why we decided to move here. It's a distinctive and attractive central part of the village. It's also part of Maudesley's local history. It appears on old photographs from the early 1900s, and memories like this are important and must be allowed to continue for future generations. Another example of the tree's importance was obvious to me when a neighbour showed me the deeds to her Victorian house. There's a copy here where it's called One Oak, and after this specific tree back in the 1800s. So it's got special significance to her too. It's a local landmark, as Kevin Foster's mentioned, that it's distinctive on that main thoroughfare through the village. And importantly, which I only found this out a few days ago, it's actually in Chorley Council's 1981 planning permission for the house built at 4A New Street. The tree was sufficiently important to be cited, the retention of it was cited as a precondition of the building of the house. And that says that the existing mature tree on the site frontage shall be retained. I shared this with Democratic Services last week. So to summarise, this beautiful tree provides an important sense of time and place, which all adds up to what I believe you call high amenity value. Probably getting short on time, so I just want to, so can I just round up? I just want to emphasise the number of people who have supported this action to protect the tree. 112 people engaged with a social media post put out by a neighbour. I know there's 9 people written in support. Maudsley Parish Council's unanimously supported the TPO, so it's an enormous amount of people for a small village, and I hope you support the permanency of the TPO.
Thank you. Right, so over to you members. I've got Councillor Ainsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to support the TPO application. The Everstone Look and the tree
Councillor Whittam.
adds to the area.
I'm all for preserving veteran trees such as this. It is quite a bit of a landmark there, and long may they survive, so I'll second the proposal.
Thank you. Anyone else wish? Any more comments from anybody? If not, I'll move to the vote. Please, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to confirm the making of a tree preservation order.
Okay, thank you. If you want to go now, you can. You don't have to stay. Okay. And we'll move on to item 5, which is the appeals report.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, we've had notification of 2 appeals against delegated refusals, one at Bluestone Cottage, Maudsley, for extensions to the property, and one at 2 Preston Road, Chorley, which was for an internally illuminated gable advertising screen. We've had an appeal decision, as we've touched on previously, at Douglas Bank Farm. The appeal was dismissed as the inspector found that the use of the land for wagon storage to be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. We've got 2 enforcement appeal decisions. So the first one was an appeal against the serving of an enforcement notice for the siting of a shipping container at Trafalgar Street, Chorley. So that appeal was dismissed and the enforcement notice was upheld. And finally, an enforcement notice served on land at 72 Church Lane, Charnock Richard. This notice was quashed as it didn't specify precisely enough the alleged breach of planning control, so officers are now reviewing that case. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, anybody any questions? Okay, all those who are happy to accept that report, just please show. Any against? Any abstentions?